So today we are going to explain why making a salary of $100,000 a year just does not feel like enough. It feels tight. And the first problem is you're kind of not really supposed to say that out loud, and you're kind of not allowed to feel that way. You kind of get shamed, or you kind of get talked down to if you even utter something like that. But you're not wrong. You need to trust your gut on this, and I'm going to explain why. So the first thing you have to understand is that what a $100,000 a year salary used to be in the 90s and what it is today are not the same thing. What it meant in the 90s is that you were very much on the road to becoming a millionaire because you obviously had surplus income. And so right there, surplus income implies that your needs are covered and you have room for wants and for luxuries. And so ultimately that meant you have moved out of survival, you have moved out of stability, and you're moving towards success. And there was this idea that if you're making six figures a year, you kind of didn't really have to continue to work up the ladder beyond that. You could kind of hit that point and just set cruise control and kind of be good to go for the rest of your working career. And so you were very easily able to afford a home and to have kids and to start a family, which were a huge part of the traditional American dream. So if that's what $100,000 used to be, when we all set our goal to become six-figure earners, now we have to actually look at what is it today. So if we just look at the Consumer Price Index, which is how the government tracks inflation, which by the way, I don't think is a good way to track inflation, $100,000 in today's money is roughly equivalent to just under $50,000 in the mid-90s. And in my opinion, just based on the research I've done, I kind of think $100,000 today is probably closer to $40,000 in the 90s, but let's just use $50,000 for the purposes of this video. So now the next question is obviously, well, if $100,000 today is equivalent to $50,000 30 years ago, what is the new $100,000? What would we have to make today to have the equivalent of a $100,000 income in the 90s, which is all what we signed up for and what we wanted in the first place? So the answer, again, using CPI, is that you would have to earn $205,000 a year to have the equivalent of $100,000 30 years ago. In my opinion, based on my research, I think that number is probably closer to $250 today if you have a family and if you're living in a major metropolitan area. Okay, so we've acknowledged the big disconnect in the math. $100,000 today was $40,000 back then. And really, I need to be making $205 or higher to get what $100,000 used to buy. But what's underneath all this? What's actually driving this? Because it shouldn't be that way. And the really simple answer, the talk to me like I'm a fifth grader answer, is one word: it's inflation. And everybody kind of sort of knows that on some level. The easiest way to say it is that inflation erodes the value of the dollar over time. When the government prints money, they debase the value of our fiat currency because the new dollars make all the dollars that are already in existence less valuable because there's now more of them. That is inflation. So if we're saying inflation erodes the value of the dollar over time, imagine this. You're watching a football game. The offense is on the 50-yard line. They're trying to go to the goal line. So the goal line, just imagine that is where all of your financial goals are, whether it be a certain income you want to earn or retirement number, whatever else. You're trying to get to the goal line. So if the offense is on the 50-yard line, they're 50 yards away. But imagine if every time the offense ran a play and snapped the ball, imagine if the goal line moved further away by 3%. So what would happen is if the offense ran 10 plays, the goal line would have actually moved an additional 17 yards further away from the 50-yard line, which is where they started. If the offense had to run 15 plays, the goal line would have moved 28 yards from the initial 50-yard line. Well, that's the game you're playing. You have to understand that the goal line and the goalposts are moving backwards this whole time. And that is why when you grew up and thought $100,000 was kind of the financial finish line or success, it's kept moving all this time. And so you worked hard and you finally got to where you're earning $100,000 and you are looking around going, this is it? This doesn't seem to work. This is tight. And what I'm telling you is that the income you actually wanted, according to CPI, is now $205,000. And it kept moving this whole time. And it's going to keep moving because of inflation. So you're sitting there going, wow, that is really frustrating. I wish somebody would have told me this a long time ago. The reason you were thinking that way is because you've been listening to and abiding by 90s financial advice. One of the downfalls of 90s financial advice is it does a horrible job accounting for inflation, and a lot of people that push it really hard, I'm not sure they actually understand inflation at all. And the most frustrating thing about this is if you are not clear on what the problem is and what problem you're trying to solve, you can't have a solution. And so all these competing voices, on one hand, your gut saying something seems off here and I don't think it's what I did wrong. And then all these other people that are further down the line and financial gurus or whatever, they're telling you you just need to spend less and budget better. That creates confusion. And so you don't do anything. And then a year or 5 years later, you're feeling the same thing and you're still in the exact same spot. So if you take anything away from this today, I want you to understand that your gut feeling is probably correct. More than likely, a $100,000 a year salary is probably not enough if you're trying to raise a family and you live in a major metro area because of how much inflation has increased since the 90s. $100,000 today is absolutely not what it used to be. And if you're shooting for that kind of lifestyle and that kind of surplus income, you have to adjust your expectations because the goal line and the goalposts have moved backwards. So by this point, you probably have your own opinion. And so I want to know, do you feel like $100,000 today is closer to what you understood $50,000 to be in the 90s or $40,000? And do you agree with me or do you disagree that $100,000 in the 90s translates to 205, or is it closer to 250, or is it some other number and I've completely missed the point? I want to hear from you what you think in the comments. If this was helpful and we connected some dots today, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.